Welcome to the next generation of indoor entertainment.
Ah yes, Sega World. The memories. What a great thing that I never got to go to because I live here. And also I was dead during this time. Yeah. But basically, Sega World is not this theme park that you would think of like Nintendo Land that's coming soon. It is an indoor arcade park. Now, because this is in the 90s, it is not going to be easy to find really clear and HD pictures to use, so if you see something that's really pixely, I am sorry. This was before really cool cameras were cheap and available for everyone. So I'm going to focus mostly on the Trocadero one in Sega World London, because that seems to be like the most known one, the most popular one. But first off, let me just mention the first Sega World, because there's a lot of arcade parks made by Sega. So the first one to open was in 1993 in Bournemouth on 4547 Westover Road. Sega would use this one to test out new arcade machines. That's all I have to say about the first one. Now let's just talk about the main one. So Sega World London in Trocadero opened in 1996. This would be the biggest indoor theme park at the time, and it had 6 levels, and it started off with the 6th one and went all the way down. So on the 6th one is where you could get admission into the park and the rides. Also on this floor was a Beast in Darkness motion simulator, and also a place where you can try out Sega Saturn consoles, sort of like in stores, go into a display and sort of play around. The 5th floor had a lot of fighting games, no rides, just fighting games. The 4th floor was themed to be a racing level that had a bunch of racing arcade games, and the ride on this floor was Aqua Planet, which was a motion simulator with 3D glasses. Also, Damon Hill's FW15C also appeared. It was used in the 1993 Formula 1 season. Level 3 was themed to be a flying area with 20 different flying arcade games. In addition, it had rides like Space Mission, not to be confused with Mission Space and Epcot. They're not the same thing. There was also Mad Bazooka, a ride similar to Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blaster in Disney Quest, which is now dead. And speaking of Disney Quest, Disney was actually technically Sega's competitor, because if you didn't know, Disney Quest is an indoor arcade theme park, just like Sega World, except a couple months ago it closed. And there were a couple locations and all this stuff. So yeah, it's pretty odd that Sega and Disney were competitors, but even stranger is that, speaking of Epcot, at one point Sega displayed their consoles in Epcot's Innovation Center. I don't know how that works, where you're a competitor while being a friend at the same time, but hey, it worked. So also on the 3rd level was a McDonald's, and it also featured an EX RAF Harrier jump jet, and it was for sale. Yeah, what the fuck? No kid's gonna buy it. I'm sorry. On level 2, there was a UFO catcher, which are claw machines, and over 80 arcade machines with 3 rides. House of Grandish, Ghost Hunt, and House of Grandish was similar to like a Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger spinner. I don't know how many Disney similarities there are going to be here, even though Sega did most of them first. There's also a Power Sled, which is a simulator type ride where you control a joystick and maneuver the slide. On level 1 was a sports theme, which contained over 90 sports themed games and had a Sega store, as well as an AS1 motion simulator housing 8 players. It allows them to control the ride according to what's being displayed. According to SegaRetro.com, there were only 2 games available for it, Tokyo City Battle and Michael Jackson in Scramble Training. If you haven't already noticed, Pepsi seems to be appearing here and there a lot. And that's because Pepsi was a very big sponsor to Sega, except they weren't sponsoring Sega, they were actually sponsoring Trocadero, so Sega was not making any money from this. But Pepsi did have a Pepsi Max drop ride, a Pepsi IMAX cinema theater. So now let's talk about Sega World Sydney, which was the 2nd most popular Sega World. This was also referred to as Australia's interactive Disneyland. It opened a year after Trocadero's Sega World opened in 1977. It costed around 80 million Australian dollars to build, or around 60 million US dollars. And unlike the 6 floor levels that the Trocadero had, this one was a more walkthrough type of park. There were 3 sections to enter with over 200 arcade games. There was the past, the present, and the future, with color-changing halls called time tunnels. By the way, they look like something from Disney. By 1999, the park was losing money and forced Sega to pull out and sold the property to Jack Fund for 36 million Australian dollars. Ironically, a year later, thanks to the Sydney Olympics, 800,000 people attended the whatever it was called, but then it went back down and it would close later that year in November. And 8 years later, it would be demolished. Pretty sad to see it just destroyed. So anyways, back to Sega World in London. So during the first full year of Sega World in Trocadero, only 950,000 people attended, and Sega estimated that there would be over 1 million. The attendance was so low that eventually they had to remove entry fees to attract more people, but failed to. The 10-year contract that Sega signed with Trocadero had a 3-year termination agreement if Sega World did not gross £3 million. So, when that time came, Sega World did not make £3 million, so the contract was terminated. On top of that, I'm more than positive that Trocadero noticed Sega's decline, just in general with the Dreamcast and all that stuff, so they just removed Sega from Sega World, and they rebranded it to be called Funland. As time went on, Pepsi's Max Drop and IMAX Cinema were removed, and the IMAX was relocated in 2000. Funland would soon start to close levels in 2002. Certain parts of Sega still remained intact though, but eventually Funland would close entirely, only leaving a few arcade machines at the front. But then the arcade machines would be removed to other arcade companies like Heart of Gaming and Las Vegas. And others collected dust in the Trocadero basement. And that was basically all that remained of the biggest Sega World.
Everything is shut. Jesus God, look how desolate it is! Oh my God, it's so barren now, isn't it? So it's just like 2 floors. Well look, there's a few things going on down there.
Shortly after, many other Sega Worlds would start closing. And you can only find them now in Japan. They aren't really the same like they were in like Trocadero and places like that. So why exactly did Sega World fail as a whole? It seemed like something that was just failing since the beginning, and that's sort of what happened because it only lasted a couple years. But there was also something else which I've been mentioning the whole time, which is sort of foreshadowing, and that was Disney Quest. I know I'm mentioning Disney a lot in this video, but there's just some sort of odd similarity between the way that they both failed, because it's exactly the same. They both had very low attendance, and the technology, even though it was amazing at the time, was sort of becoming outdated as time went on, and that was something that really hurt them. Of course, the last Disney Quest in Florida lasted so long because it's in Disney, which is like the most visited place in the world. But yeah, unfortunately, this was not really a good time for Sega. The late 90s and early 2000s, that was just a very big decline for Sega. And once again, like I believe I said in the Sega Red Ring of Death video, it really is heartbreaking because this is an amazing company. And even though I've never been to a Sega World, I'm sure it was amazing. Even trying out the rides now, even though they're outdated, probably would still be amazing. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.